Well, good evening and welcome to DoreOnTour for this evening's chat about Nottingham Forest. Now, tonight's topic is Valencia versus Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest lost in a 1-0 defeat over in Spain this evening. It was a game that wasn't particularly enjoyable to watch, but actually I don't think it was the worst performance we've ever had. And I do think there is actually a lot of reasons to be optimistic. So if you were looking for a stream about panicking and Forest are going to go down, you're on the wrong stream. It's okay. Don't panic. It's pre-season. Some of the guys getting a bit of a run out, getting some minutes under their belt, some minutes in the tank, getting their fitness ready. It's just nice to see some of the lads get a run out. And of course, a little bit disappointing to see Moussa Niakate get his injury. So the injury Nottingham Forest have said is a dislocated elbow. It's not very nice. I've seen some people saying it could be like a few weeks out, maybe a month. I don't really know. I'm not a doctor or a physiotherapist, so I won't be able to say. But it's not a nice injury. It's not a couple of days kind of job, I don't think. It's not particularly nice. My dad had one. His was a little bit more serious and it lasted quite a while. But this one, it could only be a few weeks, maybe a month. But it's a little bit devastating, to be honest, because we all know the things that Moussa has been through in the last year with his hamstring problems and then the issues that arose from that. So a little bit devastating, but he'll be back stronger, I'm sure, ready for the next games in the Premier League. But I don't know if he'll feature for the rest of the pre-season. But we'll wait and see what Forest say before we make any judgments on that. So, first of all, good evening. I hope you're all having a good evening so far. And if you're just joining in, we will be talking a little bit about Valencia. And Des will be joining me in around 10 minutes' time to chat a little bit more about the game and also news regarding Forest. So let's have a little look at who's in the chat. And let's have a look. So, Paz Lebon, you Reds, I hope you're doing well, my friend. Chris Game, good to see you. Been a while. Hey, Jay, did someone get injured in tonight's game? Yeah, it was, unfortunately. Moussa Niakate, hoping that he recovers fast and we'll get to see him again soon. Peter Welsh says, hi Jay, I hope you're doing well, Peter. Thank you for joining the stream this evening. Evening Stranger, I asked that Clough guy for some live fed, but they wouldn't let him in tonight, lol. Sorry, okay. Peter Hodgson, hope you're doing well, Peter. Good to see you in. Ghost of John Joe, evening, how are you doing? We're going to discuss a little bit about this, Patrick, definitely. Because I don't think that Forest need just one keeper. I think that Forest need two goalkeepers. I think that Wayne Hennessy will probably go third keeper, but if he didn't, I'd trust George Shelvey. But I think George Shelvey needs to get game time. He's young. And I do see him breaking into the first team setup in a few years. If I'm being completely honest, I think there's a real good goalkeeper in George Shelvey. It will take time, obviously. It's not ready just yet. But yeah, he's a good goalkeeper, is George Shelvey. So don't sleep on him. But for now, yeah, we need to get in maybe Jose Sarr and definitely Dean Henderson. They would be the two I'd go after, or Mateus Malgaez from Braga. Rads, good evening, my friend. I hope you're well. Looking forward to seeing your vlogs at the start of the season. Not long to go now. Not long to go. Dislocation depends on if cartilage or ligament has come away from bone or muscle. Yeah, exactly. This is the thing. With my dad's, it was quite serious and it had come away from it. So it was a long time. But we'll have to wait and see and find out. We're hoping that it's nothing serious. No need to panic at this stage, I'm sure. Eve, good evening. I hope you're doing well. Great to see those pictures of Ryan Yates and Joe Worrell. Get to them. Love the pictures on Twitter. I hope you're doing well. Brilliant week for you. Loved seeing that. Paul, evening, Jay. No need to panic. Absolutely. No need to panic. No panicking here. I enjoyed watching the game, having my dinner, and also tried to tune up on my Spanish a little bit. I'm learning Spanish, so trying to listen to Spanish commentary and get a gist of what the game was about. Paddy Irish, evening, Jamie. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Good evening. Thank you for joining. Game of 316. All good, thank you. I hope you're okay too. Hoping to get back on this streaming lot very soon. I'm sorry for my absence. And a big shout out to Dore for giving me this opportunity to do this while he's at work. I'll be filling in for you, doing the night shift, if you like, just talking a little bit about the club that we all love. And Dawn, I hope you're doing well. Love you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comment. I'm looking forward to seeing you very soon. So let's talk about it. Valencia Forest. It's a 1-0 defeat. Is it a reason to be negative, though? I'm going to list my reasons why it's not. It's pre-season for one. Of course, the players have just come off the back of a big Premier League campaign. They've been on holidays. There's a few players missing. Morgan Gibbs-White, Brendan Johnson, Taiwo Awoniyi, who, by the way, isn't there because of a visa issue. It's to do with the Schengen visa. I think it was a guy called Des Footy. Shout out to Des, by the way. Really great knowledge of Nigerian footballers. And he said that it was to do with a Schengen visa and a holiday. So, yeah, it's one of those things. Hopefully, it'll get resolved soon, and maybe Taiwo will be in Spain for the Levante game on the 22nd. But if not, he'll be ready for the PSV game, Frankfurt game, hopefully, which would be nice to see. But Taiwo's never really had a lot of luck, to be honest, with visa problems. He actually struggled with visa issues when he was at Liverpool. That's why he got loaned out to teams in Germany before, and eventually left Liverpool because of it. So, interesting fact for you. But yeah, no reason to panic. There's a few reasons. Let me know what you're thinking of the game. Any players that you kind of like the look of? I've got to say, obviously, Danilo is a given, really, for me. I don't really think anybody can question his performance today. Probably the best attacking player we had going forward. I mean, he was going to be anyway once he got on the pitch, because Hwang didn't get really much delivery, in fairness to him. He looks like a bit of a workhorse, does Hwang Yu-jo. But, you know, it's it's whether he's going to make the 25, because this is the uncomfortable thing that we're going to have to talk about. And we won't talk about it too much now, because I don't want it to consume too much time, because now is about fitness, integration, and trying to build up some momentum ready for the new season, giving some of the younger lads a kick about as well. But the 25-man squad conversation does have to come about at some point, and whether Hwang Yu-jo makes it, I'm not entirely sure, but we'll let Steve Cooper do that job. But without further ado, then, there is someone waiting in the lobby at the moment. He's a bit of a legend, I'll tell you. And he's going to be talking a little bit about this Valencia game with me this evening. So, Des, how you doing, my friend? Welcome to the stream.
Good to see you, Jamie. Good evening.
Good to see you. So you what do you think about the Valencia game, then?
The game? Sorry, you broke up there.
Did you? Yeah, sorry, no, my Wi-Fi there. What do you think of the game?
It was all right, wasn't it? I thought Forest was a bit more lively than Saturday. I thought we zipped it about a little bit. Took us a little bit of time to settle down, but I thought seeing Mangala and Danilo in the team, it meant the passing was a bit sharper in midfield. Danilo looked lively, really impressed with him. Perhaps brought the worst out in Hwang, because I felt Hwang couldn't keep up with him. He was almost ahead of him at times and on a different wavelength. So I thought Danilo did well. Forest looked a bit better. Good opposition. Bolly was a bit of a rock in that first half, I thought. And another really, really assured performance from the young goalkeeper. I thought Shelby, the basics in football sometimes... young goalkeepers are shot stoppers normally, but this guy seems to have good handling. He's good with his feet. I've seen him knock a few out from the back in tight situations. So again, it's a game not being played at a million miles an hour. The 1-0 defeat is nothing to lose any sleep about and get carried away on. But I just thought it was a good workout, to be honest. These type of games, you know what you're getting. You tune in and you think, what is it going to be? And I just felt it was a lot more promising than what we saw against Notts County.
So then, looking forward then to Levante, PSV, and Frankfurt. Then, which players are you going to be looking at most to maybe get a little bit more game time? Because I'm thinking maybe Dale Taylor getting a little bit more game time. So we don't really have a proper striker out there at the moment. So Dale Taylor's kind of one of your only striking options in terms of that all-out nine kind of player. Maybe Josh Powell as well. Got a few minutes today. Seemed okay.
Yeah, I thought he did okay at the weekend as well, Josh Powell. I'm a big fan of Dale Taylor. I'd like to see him perhaps go out and learn again, or perhaps stick around and sort of hang around the bench and the sort of reserves and fight for a place to some degree. We know that's not going to be the case just yet, but I do like Taylor. I think he's got great physique. In a way, and this sounds ridiculous, but I look at the way Harry Kane developed, and his physique and his size. I'm not saying he's ever going to be the player Harry Kane is, but it's somebody who came into the game a little bit later, lots of loan spells, goal scoring record that didn't really pull up any trees, and then obviously became England's record goal scorer. So I'd like to see him develop in a similar way, perhaps with lots of loan spells. But I do think when he sort of drops deep and gets that ball, he offers something a little bit different to what Forest have got up front. And whilst I was slightly impressed with Wang on Saturday, only slightly, again, not getting carried away. I like the way he sort of played on the shoulder of the last defender and that kind of thing against Notts County. He didn't really cut the mustard today, did he? He wasn't up with the pace of the game, and he's probably at a level somewhere in between in reality. So if Taylor does that, of course, there's Josh Powell, there's Bowler. He made a little bit of an impression when he came on today. I felt, again, not too much, because it was, as these games go on and the substitutions get made, the game kind of gets lost in everything, doesn't it? It becomes all about just running around for a little bit and building up those fitness levels. So, yeah, there was one or two bright sparks there. You asked me the question about the next couple of games and what I'd like to see in terms of, obviously, the big players come back. Seem to have been the case to some degree tonight. Although most of the players that played tonight played at the weekend as well, but perhaps played a little bit more. The bulk of the substitution didn't take place till, I think it was the 65th, 70th minute, wasn't it? So yeah, lots of players. Joe played a full 90 minutes. Willie Bolly got plenty of minutes under his belt. So it's good to see those kind of things, and hopefully as we go into the more sort of established friendlies, the ones that are going to be a more competitive environment, as Steve Cooper put it after the Notts County game. That's what is getting the guys back into that situation. I think I'd like to see, of course, the big names really come back. Felipe, Morgan Gibbs-White, the ones who are all our favourites, and see where we go from there. But for now, it is what it is, isn't it, Jay? It's one of those. There's been one or two murmurings of it's not going well and this is not happening, but they're always the same. I've seen it for many years. I've seen Forest win every pre-season game, and you think you're in for the best season, and we get relegated. And then I've seen us lose every pre-season game and finish high up the table or challenging for promotion. So it just is what it is, and it's the way the manager sort of picks it and what he wants to see from the players. And again, the result isn't at the forefront of everybody's mind in these things.
So what are your thoughts on pre-season as a whole anyway? Not just in terms of the performances and everything, but the whole idea of what pre-season really is. Because I know that we both have social media. We're both active users of social media. I'm sure that those listening now are, let us know if you are users of Twitter in particular. The timeline has been a little bit gloomy. Obviously it was a 1-0 loss and, conceding the 46th, 47th minute, but I don't think we were that bad as you say. But what are your thoughts on just pre-season in general then? Is there really that need to panic? Because obviously you can have concerns, but to panic?
Yeah, let's be honest, Age. The game against Notts County at the weekend was, I wasn't concerned about it because we see it season in, season out. These results. Last year we only drew with them, for example. And we had a relatively decent season in terms of achieving what we needed to achieve. So it's absolutely necessary. Again, it's about building that situation, isn't it, to a point where the guys are starting to play for places, looking at the ones who might need moving on, the players like Wang, like Bowler, like Drager, who've barely had a run out in a Forest shirt. I think I recall last season at Burton, what's his name, played Ionu at left back. And you could just tell you could tell by the manager's reaction that he wasn't going to be playing in the Premier League last season. So when players have been out on loan, especially when they've been bought and sold because of the numbers we had last year, it's a necessity to see where they are. But like I say, we don't need to be too concerned. But there's one or two things I felt against Notts County, that almost second string again, or perhaps second to third string, a lot of young players, it just shows how far they are off the first team. You know, even from Saturday to tonight, much more pleased with the way we kept the ball, the energy, the tempo. So I think all those things were pleasing, and you can go to the county game, and the worry would be that some of those players just really ain't going to cut it. I sensed from some of Steve Cooper's interviews that it might not have been a game he particularly wanted, and that's why we might have seen all those players play. Players who we know are, let's be frank about it, absolutely fighting for their future. When it comes to Bowler, Drager, Wang, Mighton, Boyer, all these players appear to be the names. That's not me saying it. It's what's common knowledge in the media and things like that. So I think it's easy to get worried about stuff like that. And like I say, it's worrying in the fact that that kind of team with that many youngsters couldn't really lay a glove on Notts County, so to speak. Yes, we won the game. We come away with that goal after a defensive mix-up, but they dominated possession in the main. So yes, that side of it. But in terms of the bigger picture and what the Premier League's all about, how many of those players that started against Notts County are going to start against Arsenal? I'd imagine it would be zero.
Yeah.
When I look at Joe Worrell maybe, I think that was the one, wasn't it? But other than that, Nico maybe as well. So there's a couple, but again, they're not necessarily first choices. They're in there fighting. So I think it's a case of just seeing where we are, reintegrating the players. Of course, there's been guys who've been playing all summer, like Morgan Gibbs-White, who need a rest. Felipe probably needs managing a little bit more at his age. We realise that he's whilst he's absolutely amazing, he's coming to the sort of twilight of his career. So I think it's all worthwhile, and it gets us going as well, doesn't it, Jamie? Some of these fixtures, we're looking forward to seeing perhaps the Leeds game, and we were looking forward to PSV, but that didn't quite come out. And again, it just gets us all back in the mood, and we obviously love talking about football. It gets us all talking, doesn't it? I think the important thing is just to maintain some perspective with pre-season. And as I've said several times already, just keep going. Just keep seeing where we are. It's easy to find the negative, but like tonight, all I really tried to do, apart from what I've touched on with Wang, is just pick out the players that have done okay.
Well, that's all you can. I mean, that's what pre-season is, isn't it? It's, as you say, not really a need to worry, but there's going to be questions over certain players. And I want to kind of touch on a couple, not to dig any players out, by the way, because obviously the Premier League is very demanding. And this is the thing, because when Forest were in the Championship, a lot of the younger players or some of the kind of, fringe players, you could see maybe making that jump into the team when Forest aren't playing too well. You could see Mighton maybe getting a bit of game time in the Championship. You maybe could have seen Harbottle, who's now gone to Hibernian, maybe getting some form of game time here and there, when he came back from his loan. Josh Bowler definitely would have got game time for me. Maybe Hwang, maybe Draker. But the fact that we're still Premier League now means that while, as you say, they are fighting for their place in the squad, I do think that some of them are fighting a little bit of a losing battle, because unless we can't sign certain players, and we have to, I don't see Alex Mighton getting into that first team. I think he's lacking confidence a lot, obviously, but he isn't up to the Premier League standard. Josh Bowler, I'm not too sure, to be completely honest. That's one I'm not too sure. Hwang, a goal against Notts County, fair enough, but it's that 25-man squad. The Premier League is so demanding. Every single person that goes into that 25-man squad has to deserve it, has to earn it, and has to be the best quality, because we can't take chances and there can't be any sentimentality. So what do you think about Alex Mighton and also Remo Freuler as well? Because despite him having a lot of Premier League appearances last season, could be on his way out this summer.
Yeah, I'll come to Freuler, as we always seem to do. You make a point there about the young kids, and that was the worrying aspect from Saturday. What I mentioned, what I did a show the other night with Dore and Dave, and Dave hit the nail on the head. Perhaps this rise from Forest has come a little bit too quickly for some. I was eulogising over Brennan Johnson, saying how much I love him, how much I rate him, how much I'd love him to stay. And reminding people that at times got on his case how quick this guy's come on. He's gone on the quickest ride he could have imagined, a more meteoric rise than the team, because he played at Lincoln 2 years ago. And what we've got to understand is not every young player is going to make it. Most don't. We've seen it in the past. Craig Westcott, John Paul Pittman, probably a little bit before your time, Jay.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be the next best things, and it doesn't quite work out. So, and when the team then go on a bit of a ride, like Steve Cooper's taken them, they've not had that chance to sort of play more minutes, perhaps in League Cup games at Shrewsbury or wherever you get drawn, when you're in the Championship in the first round. I remember Riley Harbottle, Tyrese Forner playing a game against, it might have been against Wolves, the round before against Bradford, it might have been that one instead. But they got time because they was in the Championship. But now you go out and sign 30 players, so your League Cup games become your second string almost. Your young players become your third string, if you get where I'm getting to with that. So it might have been a case of a meteoric rise from the team has just left some of these behind. They're going to have to go out and forge careers for themselves. Mighton in particular, I spoke after the game on Saturday. Of course, he took some criticism and for his performance. It wasn't great. And people sort of use the Sheffield Wednesday experience and things like that. Whilst it's definitely a factor, at the end of the day, these things happen, don't they? The kid's got to go out there, work his socks off. I'm not saying he doesn't. I don't know personally. I'm not seeing enough of him, obviously, since he was at Sheffield Wednesday to understand. But he seems to work hard during games. But he's got to go out there and make it happen for himself again, because that's exactly what Brennan's done. Brennan is really sort of knuckled down. Riley Harbottle went out on loan to Mansfield, and he's got a bit of a move this season. For whatever Scottish football is, a move to the Scottish Premier League for a guy who's not played other than a League Cup tie for Forest is a big move, and it could catapult him into a different place again. So there's a lot to be said for sort of the way the team's progressing. Those 30 signings as well was always going to hold progress in that sense. We know Cooper loves to work with the youngsters. He loves to develop them. I'm sure he'd like to do that a lot more. I'm sure he'd like a squad of about 20 players rather than 40, and then introduce 2-3 young players he can work with. And it seemed to be the case, didn't it, with Mighton, with Johnson, and one or two others, around the time he came in and in the Championship. But then, of course, the signings sort of pushed them out at the side. So, yes, it's a crucial time for them. And as you see, as the Harbottle sort of sale or departure shows, it's sort of make or break time for these kids as well. They've got decisions to make. Do I go out somewhere else, or do I try and forge a career in the Premier League? And it must be one of the toughest decisions to make. And we'd have all swapped it for the world. But so I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it is going to be a tough decision trying to sort of dictate which way your career goes. So they're going to be short on chances. But again, these pre-seasons, sometimes football is a funny game, isn't it? I was just thinking about Shelby and the situation with Dean Henderson, and it's lingering on and it's lingering on, and the season's getting closer. I was just thinking, sometimes you never know if he found himself in the goal in between the sticks. I'm not suggesting this would happen. I'm sure they're going to tie the deal up or sort something in the next couple of weeks. But if he found himself between the sticks in the Arsenal game and he had a worldie, he's a keeper of a certain age where all of a sudden he becomes the next Dean Henderson. He becomes the next Aaron Ramsdale. And football's funny like that. So pre-season again, Mighton might go out the next game and score 2 goals, and then all of a sudden he starts the next game and he might score 1 goal, and players get onto a bit of a roll. So these games again are definitely important in that sense. Looking at the more experienced players in terms of Foyer, and one or two others that I still think we could slightly improve on. It's playing games at the minute at the start of pre-season. It'll say a lot if he's playing against Eintracht Frankfurt, a week before the start of the season. You'd think he's still massively in the plans. The way Steve's shaped up with the usual formation we're playing in the Premier League, it seems he's going to be that sort of anchor in there at the moment, because we haven't got anybody else to be that anchor. That's his job. That's the shape he's got to work with, and he can only deal with what he's got in front of him. I would suspect that Foyer might move on. There's been a lot of speculation in the same way as Dennis, and Sam Surridge. So those guys have, particularly Surridge, but they. I was going to say they've done a job for Forest. They've been a piece in the jigsaw to move in to a different place, I feel, because I'm not sure Foyer and Dennis particularly excelled. But again, we had to stay in the Premier League, and would Joe Lolly been any better than Emmanuel Dennis? There was one or two goals Emmanuel Dennis scored which won his games. But I love Joe Lolly, absolutely loved him to pieces. Would have loved to have seen him get a chance, even though I felt his career had stagnated for a while. But Dennis was probably an upgrade, and now it's probably come to a point where we need to upgrade again. Because I keep saying to people, if we stick with the same 11 that played all last season, because all of a sudden we've fallen back in love with them, because we finished well and we did this, and Tyro scored 6 goals at the end of the season, so now he's better than Harry Kane. It's not the reality, is it? I love Tyro. I think his application and the way he goes about his football is brilliant. But when it comes to ability, when it comes to a first touch and nicking a game, single-handedly, he's not quite got what Brennan Johnson's got, has he? And he relies on a strong team, and to win a Premier League football match, yes, you need a great team, a strong team effort. You need good performances. You need not to make mistakes, but also you need individual brilliance, because a game can turn like that. So anywhere where we can improve around the squad, Jay, I said it again the other night without trying to sort of go in hard on Foyer, is my biggest position we need to fill is that number 6. We tried it. Cooper recognised it. He signed Chonjo Shelby. He looked class for 20 minutes at Fulham, and he probably is class. For all the criticism we give him, he's obviously just got issues above and beyond football, but he's linked with Sheffield United. There's a player in there, but again, it didn't work for Forest, so we've got to move on. We signed Danilo almost for that role, but he's developed into a different kind of player again in the Premier League. So I think, those players have probably had their chance, and again, it will say a lot as pre-season develops and the next starting 11 comes out as to where we are and what's happening with them next.
Let's talk depth then, because you talk about midfielders. I love talking about midfielders because they're just brilliant. I think in the Premier League, if you win a game in the midfield, you've won the game altogether. You can have a really great striker, but it's all about the midfield. And you look at Man City, they've got Rodri, your holding midfielders, and then you've got Kevin De Bruyne. And I mean, obviously those two I'd take at Forest any day. Never, ever, ever would it happen, but I consider them two probably the best 2 midfielders in the world. But you have to have good midfielders in the Premier League, and not just good midfielders, but good depth to your midfield in the Premier League. And my concern now is everyone says, yes, let's get rid of Shelby. And by the way, I'm not disagreeing, because I do think he needs to go. He doesn't really suit our style of play in terms of it, from a tactical perspective. He doesn't suit our style of play. We don't get forward enough for him to be able to play the long balls that he likes to play. That's just not how we play. Maybe next season it might be, but he's obviously the off the pitch stuff is a problem. So that's probably why he's going to leave. But if he does leave and then Kouyaté potentially leaves, obviously there's a lot of there's been a few rumours of him going to Saudi Arabia, perhaps. If you lost Kouyaté and Shelby, you've lost 2 players that are kind of capable of playing that 6 role. So Lewis O'Brien coming back, would you give him another chance? And because you're going to need to add depth in there. I mean, Brandon Aguilera doesn't need to be registered, so maybe there's a chance for him there. But it's a little bit too soon, I think, just yet. We're going to have to bring in a CDM, obviously. Will we have to bring in 2 midfielders, perhaps?
To be honest, I think we need 3 midfielders. I think you're totally right with your point that we're short on depth, and that I out back to my a point I made a little before about the Notts County game. The lack of depth shows against a team new to the Football League. Yes, I've already said, and I'm not contradicting myself, let's not get carried away with a performance in the first pre-season game. But nonetheless, the quality of player in that first half should have been all over Notts County. And you mentioned there that we don't attack very much. And for me, this is what a lot of Forest fans who get on Steve Cooper's case fail to understand. You know, he's had to adjust the teams. Cooper likes to play on the front foot. He likes to get the ball down, get it forward quickly, get Brennan down the wings, get the strikers piling into the box, or your number 10s like Zinchenko did, or Gibbs White tries to do. So that's the way he wanted to play. But then when he got to the Premier League, he realised he couldn't do that. And I think everybody pinpointed the defence as being the weakness. But not having the ball in midfield meant that we had no link from the back to the front. So all you do is get rid of the ball and it comes back. The midfield for me isn't mobile enough. Any of them. And I mean any of them apart from Danilo. And he's looking more at an attacking role. So whilst you've got Yates, who we love to bits, I feel there's a place in and around the team for Yates. I think he's the one who puts it all out there. He's the player every manager loves. He's a player that the fans have grown to love. Sometimes that sort of technical ability is missing, but at times last season he was doing 2 jobs. He was doing his job for him, and then he'd get all the criticism. Mangala, for me, he's not quick enough and dynamic enough on the football. His confidence improved at the end of the season, and I see much more from him, but he's not quick enough. He's doing that half turn back, looking backwards, looking sideways, not running, not really running. That's the thing. There's no runners in that midfield apart from Yates doing the donkey work. Because then you've got Foyer sort of roaming around a bit like a Cavalier, or Rolls Royce. Yes, he's got good technical ability, but there's no runners. So the dynamic is just not working for Forest. Nobody's getting hold of that game. I remember seeing, is it Alison Reed for Fulham?
Brilliant player.
Absolutely fantastic player who just dictates what they do. And that was a team who come out the Championship the season before and give it a real go. But they had that link up in midfield. Of course, they got Paulino as well. And that shows the quality, the difference in quality from the Championship up to, or from the lower sort of echelons of the Premier League up to mid-table. Because those 2 guys are absolutely brilliant with skillful players around them. And unfortunately for Forest, we just didn't have that link up. So I think it's an area that gives us great concern. And we've spoke about this before, Jay, that Brentford game when Cooper got absolutely slaughtered for taking the strikers off. The fact of the matter was those strikers were never going to touch the ball. I have never wanted Forest to be a defensive football side. I think Forest are the biggest team in the world. I'm deluding myself, I know. But I think against anybody, we should be taking the game to them. We are Nottingham Forest. And that's the way I see every game. I never settle for a point. But in that Brentford game, I thought the only way we can win this game is by packing the edge of the box. Brentford wasn't really penetrating. We were 1-0 up, 70 minutes, 80 minutes. And then it was individual errors that cost us. And Cooper got absolutely berated. But he'd said a couple of weeks before, we're not going to dominate the football. We're going to have to concede possession. He was almost spelling it out for people. And that's because the midfield is not good enough to keep hold of it. There was the Chelsea game. We were 1-0 up. The first half in that Chelsea game, we did to a man, they did the jobs perfectly. And I can't say that in any other performance this season. The first half against Chelsea, for me, away, which some people might raise their eyebrows at, was the best performance. They fought hard, they tackled, they cut out the stupid mistakes. They got forward. Tyro obviously got a goal. And then the second half, we give the ball away in the centre circle twice, and Raheem Sterling makes it 2-1 without them really having a sniff. It looked like they were going to blow us away from that point. So again, there's a lot coming out of that midfield that shouldn't be. The Leeds game, you've got your two international centre midfielders backing off when a guy cuts across your fullback and it's into the bottom corner, and you've got your midfielders going backwards rather than going forwards to the ball and sort of blocking that angle. So again, in every aspect, Liverpool is another one. The criminal defending, and not necessarily from the defenders when we was at Anfield, the way we got into that game, and somehow we did compete in midfield going forward, but then defensively they weren't strong enough because they were losing men. There was one where Felipe absolutely lost his head because Mangala and Foyer were just stood looking at each other when Jota had made a run into the box. So again, you look at these goals and you break them all down as pundits do, as we all do in the Premier League. And how many are from a stupid mistake in the midfield? You get away with that in the Championship. Jack Colback and Lewis O'Brien get away with that, but you don't. And you made the point there about Lewis O'Brien coming back. I'm not a massive fan of his either, because I saw in the Newcastle game he had a decent enough game. He made his debut. You thought, this guy's got plenty of energy. He gets back in, he nicks the ball off someone, but then he wanted a split second too long on the ball, and you don't get it. That dynamic factor is not there again. So a guy who, when you're in the trenches and you need to roll up your sleeves, kind of looks good because he's putting some tackles in, he's winning the ball back, but he's giving it straight back to them, and none of them keep the ball well enough to be in Forest's team. And that sounds harsh, but again, if we keep these same players, we're not going to be in any other position than 17th or below, because that's the level of player we've got these days.
So then, I don't want to take it too much off the pre-season topic then, but I'll ask the last question about it. How many players do you actually think we need to bring in then? Because I would say that personally, I think we need another centre-back, because we know that Bolly's injury prone. We know that McKenna's having his own, he's not been particularly the best injury record-wise this last season. I think you need to look at maybe an under-21 centre-back. Taylor Harwood-Bellis wouldn't be an awful shout for me. You're going to need a left-back. As you say, 2 or 3 midfielders. Maybe a left winger and then a striker, maybe. Well, I think you are going to need a striker, aren't you? Because Taiwo can't be the only outlet that Forest have for goals. You need someone who's better, if not pushing, him for his position. So, I mean, there's potentially 6 or 7 signings that we've just kind of and 2 goalkeepers as well. There could be 8 or 9 signings there. That's a lot of players.
And that's the bizarre thing, isn't it, Jay? Because we've all accepted that this season isn't going to be like last season. And when the season finished, again, we were a little bit guilty of falling in love with loan players and thinking automatically that these are going to come, Ren and Loddy and such like, And if I'm honest, I said we probably needed 4 signings, at the end of the season. But as you've just alluded to, and I was thinking about it myself, we actually need a lot more again, don't we?
Yeah.
Because the goalkeeper, 2 goalkeepers, as you said, hopefully we've kind of got that one sorted and we know who it's going to be. But then Loddy's gone. Toffolo's got a cloud over him. Omar Richards has never played a game. So you've got a big issue there, because, again, you can't just throw somebody in there, because we've seen how brutal it was last season, trying to go with what we had initially. And then that's 4 players. A centre-back, yes and no. In an ideal world, yes. Totally agree with you. I thought if we could get another real solid centre-back to play with Bolly, with Felipe, with McKenna and Worrell, that'd be a really good set.
Not urgent, though. Not urgent.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the be-all and end-all right now. Left-back, goalkeeper's critical until he signs that deal, but hopefully that's done. Left-back, not far behind him being critical. For me, the midfield just needs sorting, honestly. And there's a lot of players sort of vying in there for positions. but they need some strength, because I touched on there. I felt we played really, really well and put in our best performance in one half of football. Yes, there were games we competed. There were games we got about them. I think of the 2 Liverpool games. I felt against Liverpool, because of their weakness and how far they dropped in midfield, we managed to get on top of their midfield going forward. And that's what really helped us. I thought that was a massive turning point in keeping us up that game at Anfield, in the fact it gave us confidence going forward. But again, defensively as a midfield unit, it's just not happening. It's putting too much pressure. So a player like Joe Worrell, was really assured in the Championship, and when he's playing with confidence, he's a top player. And I still believe that. I still believe he's got it in him to be a top Premier League player. But if he's under a lot of pressure and he's not, and he makes an error and he gets punished for it, and it's wave on wave of attack, and the ball just keeps coming through the midfield without anyone putting a foot in, it becomes hard for the defence. So I think that midfield, especially the number 6, yes, again, as we spoke about there with the defence, you perhaps say, if you've got a number 6, we'll wait a little bit for the other 2 positions to kind of manifest themselves, and perhaps another window or 2, and we build again. But that number 6 position is sort of 10 out of 10 important for me, more than any, because I just think without that, we won't compete. We'll be in another battle, because to win football matches, you've got to score goals. You can concede 10 goals. You can lose 10-0 and lose 1-0. And you get no points. But if you can't score either, you're going to get no points regardless. So it's there for me. And then you look at what potentially might happen when you start thinking about the attacking players. The start of the season, Jay, I would have said, sign Henderson up, get a centre-back, hopefully Loddy or another left-back, a number 6 and a winger, and perhaps even a striker. So that would have been 5 or 6 anyway. I like the sound of Iheanacho. I think he's a good player. I think he offered a lot to Leicester's plight last season. When I watched them, he seemed to be the one that was pulling the strings when they did play well. Again, he can't do it all on his own. So I think he'd be a real addition to have him in the squad. If Brennan goes, I'd want to be setting my sights a little bit higher than Iheanacho. As much as I like him, I'd want an even sort of better player if we're losing that kind of star player. But then a winger as well that can perhaps operate off both flanks and give us something different. I mentioned the other day on the show about Brennan. I would have liked to have seen him a lot pushed out wide. But again, because of other areas of the football pitch and not dominating the ball in midfield, and almost the more you push him out wide, the more you need to get the ball to him. And Forest don't get the ball forward, because of course, if you're in the middle of the pitch, you're always actually in the action. If you're out wide, the team's got to do its job in getting the ball out to you. Your number 6 has got to be spraying your passes, to like sort of round the back of the fullback or over the top of the fullback for him to run on. So again, if we don't have the balance to the team, there's no point having wingers in it. Just like the Brentford game where there was no point having strikers, because we were never ever going to get the ball to them. And that's where I feel we're at. So as you said, it could be up to 8, 9 double-figure signings again. And that seems really, really bizarre. I feel that Forest are in already, again, they're in a real transitional period of sort of turning the squad over. They got in. It proved in the end they got in what kept us up. What they need to do is kind of unearth a few gems again, like Serge Aurier. Perhaps a free transfer from a relegation team, or just somebody who's knocking on maybe, and could perhaps plug one of those holes and have the kind of impact Aurier had. Because if he doesn't have that same impact, you might be thinking, have we got enough there, and that kind of thing. So it's a real sort of fine. I think Forest are walking a tightrope with the transfer business at the moment, and I don't want to sort of get carried away, because everybody is. If you look around the Premier League, if you look around the big clubs, there's not a great deal happening. You know, it's took months for the worst kept secret in football was Mason Mount and Declan Rice and their moves, and it took months for those to happen. And we know what happens when one happens, another one happens, and it's kind of a domino effect of who moves around. Of course, the Forest situation with Henderson's depended a lot on the Man U goalkeeper situation. That at first it was De Gea, then is it going to be Onana and things like that. So I wouldn't worry too much, but it is concerning considering the numbers that we probably need to. Because I think you'd agree with me, Jay. I'm going to kind of pose a question back to you. We kind of expect now to be pushing forward. We're saying that was the first season, that was the tough one. You know, I would have liked to think we push on. I'm sure you will as well think that we're going to push up the table. But if we don't change anything, if we take 10 goals, 10 guaranteed Premier League goals in Brennan Johnson out of the team, for example, if that happens, where do we go from there? Do you know, if they didn't sign Iniacho, even though I'd said I'd like someone else, then where do those goals come from? You know, and Iniacho is just the least I want if we've not got
Yeah.
You know, and it's those little things where again with the lack of depth, you know, and with these players who didn't perform, there's no coincidence. Just going back to the 4 one, I'm not doing it on purpose, but when he came out of the team went forward. You know, the team picked up results. So again, it's just proved that these aren't really cutting the mustard. So we can't rely on the squad and even the first 11. There is a nucleus of a really good side, I believe. But again, over time, you know, when you're looking at Felipe maybe next season, you know, you're looking at somebody to replace him possibly. And if you've not strengthened the defence this season, you find yourself with a massive hole in a position within the team, like the midfield this season. So I do think it's. I would like to see some action. I would like to see things pick up and sort of see some shape and sort of hope, I guess, going forward in terms of what Forest are going to look like on August the 12th.
And it's not far away. It's not far away. And I don't think there's any need to panic because I think Forest are at the moment spinning a lot of plates. You know, they're spinning a lot of plates. There's no denying that Forest are talking to a lot of players. You know what I mean? They're talking to a lot of players. John Percy's saying Lucas Digne. You know, I don't particularly rate him personally. I don't think he would actually be a good addition at all. I think he's expensive, old, not really what we need. But we are talking to players. You know what I mean? We're trying to get deals done, and the Henderson one has gone on for a little bit longer than everybody would have liked, but the personal terms aren't the problem. It's just Man United, which, you know, we've already known before that they are a problem. But I don't think it will be like the Garner situation. I think we will get Dean Henderson. And I think it will just be a case of one thing will happen and then it will happen, you know, all together. And whether that be Andre Onana just officially signing and then that kind of causes a chain reaction, who knows? But I think that Forest will get a cluster of deals done at the same time kind of thing. And, you know, we do need players in soon because it is pre-season and this is our first like full pre-season in the Premier League. So we do need them in soon. And it's important to stress that because you'd be naive to, you know, to not agree with that. But we've got time. We've got time, you know, and I do trust the recruitment process. There's obviously a lot of new staff in this year compared to last year. Last year it was George Sirianos and this year it'll be one led by Ross Wilson and his team now. So, you know, it'll be a different approach and there will be a lot of different guys doing it. But, you know, as much as we say quality over quantity every time, it is true, but you kind of need both. You know what I mean? You need quality and a bit of quantity. As we say, in the midfield, you're going to need a couple of people in there if you do lose the likes of Kouyaté and Shelvey. Because although we don't like Shelvey, or, well, I say we don't like Shelvey, I say that most of the fan base aren't particularly endeared to his situation. If you lose him, you're losing a body in midfield and you do have to replace him no matter what. So, you know, that's something that we are going to have to do. And it's money as well. It's FFP. Is FFP a consideration, you know, if we're going to have to bring in this many players, you know, are we going to play in a formation that's going to use wingers next season, Des? Because this is the thing about Brennan next season. is he going to be utilised to the best of his ability? Are we going to play him as a right winger where he plays best? And we're talking about getting a left winger. Are we going to play with a left winger? Because at the moment we're looking like we're going with that back five again. What are we going to do?
Well, yeah, and it's heavily dependent on a left back as well, isn't it? You know, the type of football, the type of sort of left back you might sign or you might consider. You know, for all the world, you know, some of the players who are sitting behind them are just aren't there. It's been the theme throughout the show, Jay, and I think we've touched on that about positions and how we set up and how we go about the games. You know, I don't think we've got any choice at the moment because, again, it's about sort of packing out the defence, you know, and almost making that 3 or 5, you know, and hopefully getting some midfielders in front of them. And you know, I've complained about that all the way through. But FFP must be a consideration. 30 signings, you know, there was a reason people were talking about it. And I know we all got offended when we heard this, that, or the other, and Talk Sport, and Simon Jordan, and Tony Cascarino. But there's a reason they talk about it, and there's a reason it doesn't usually work, because it becomes a scattergun approach, and then you have a top-heavy squad, and then you've got players on big contracts in the Premier League. You've got players who get promoted, and their contracts are bigger. Look at Harry Arter, you know, and it all builds into a crescendo of it's not been done quite right, and that's that. We're not saying anything wrong there because transfer acquisition panels have been sacked twice in a season. You know, that's fact. That's for everybody to see. The manager didn't get the chop, you know, and yes, it was precarious at times, and perhaps the owner considered it, but the manager can only work with what he's got. And if ultimately the squad's not up to the right level, it doesn't matter what formation it picks. You know, any Forest fan surely remember Brian Clough saying, can pick what formations you want. It boils down to the players at the end of the day doing their job. Good football players will win good football matches. You know, so we can rant and rave about tactics. Yes, it has an impact because it always will do and it always has done. You know, and it's how you approach games and application and things like that. But ultimately, the best players find a way to win football matches. You know, I'm sure. Like with sort of Brennan, you know, he was. I don't know. I'm surmising a little bit here, but I suppose he was a striker when he was young, and he finds his way onto the right wing. I look at someone like Ashley Cole, for example, was a striker, but ultimately played left back. That's the point I'm really getting to: is they find a position, they find a way to make it happen. And
Michael Dawson was centre forward.
Pardon?
Michael Dawson was centre forward.
Well, there you go. And good players find a way to sort of adapt their positions, their approach to football, you know, and even during football matches they do that. They find a way amongst the manager's tactics and things like that. Because if you're not good enough, you ain't going to win. And I just feel that Forest are at a real crossroads right now of having a really, really promising season that takes us that massive step forward, or finding it a real struggle again. And that's not negativity. You know, last week, like every football fan, you go through these phases during the summer and you hear a lot of rumours and things. When we were signing Willian, you know, when it was virtually done, it was like, oh, well, that's the real type of signing we want. Because one thing that was proven last year was the players that had got Premier League experience really, really did the job. You know, Serge Aurier and the goalkeeper, for example, early on, those players were massive and key to what we did. And then the ones who played in the top leagues in Europe, Lodi, Felipe, came to the fore. You know, they played in an Atletico Madrid team. They're a top team. So they was the ones that really kept us where we are. We just... Yeah, you're right. You know, it's going to be crucial how we approach these games, what formations and what tactics are applied. But again, without personnel, without quality personnel, it doesn't really matter, because Kevin De Bruyne is going to be better than just about every other footballer on the pitch. So on most days, he's going to beat them. If your number 6 can't track him, you know, at all, he's got a free ride, hasn't he? If you've got a player who's going to get the foot in, do well, you know, do what they need to do, and then be able to play on the front foot. And I know Kevin De Bruyne is the extreme example, but if a player can't do it at any point during the season, like we've seen last season, there's no point. And they've got to be consistent. Consistency is key again. Tyrone Awoniyi, loved what he did in May. I thought he should have got Premier League Player of the Month. I don't know why they didn't do one for May. He scored 6 goals. He should have been the Player of the Month. And I was thinking if he got that, it might give him more confidence, But we can't say Tyrone had an amazing season. Yes, he got some goals and he got as many as Jono in the end, but it was really condensed into a short space of time, and we wouldn't have taken that away. Like I said before, it takes everything to move the team forward and to get the results at the right time. But he needs to be a lot more consistent than what he was. Yes, there was injuries as well, but there was a period at the start of the season where it just wasn't happening for him. So whatever position or role that people are required to do in the team, then players have got to step up and do it. And whether it's the ones we've got or new signings or whatever, I just, like I keep saying, I think it's a really crucial time to sort of be honest, be honest with himself. All the things I do in my personal life, Jamie, talking about mental health and things, you've got to be honest with yourself at the end of the day. And as football fans, we're a bit blinkered and we put the blinkers on and we see it the way we want it. And the realism is we really, really struggled in the Premier League last season. So if we don't get it right this summer, we're going to really, really struggle again, and it's going to be a tough watch.
It is. And and it's, it's important to, stress as well is, there's no need to panic. I don't think we are pre-season, but things do have to change. You can get found out pretty quickly because we all know that it's unsustainable to play the way we were the last few games of the season in terms of the lack of possession we have, because we can all laugh and joke about, 12% possession and, it's funny. And, it was for the last few games when you stay up with that low possession, and Steve Cooper knew that was going to happen, but he will know if we want to transform ourselves into a side that doesn't have to battle against relegation every year. We have to transition into an established Premier League team. We're not quite there yet. We're established for another year, but as an established Premier League team, you're looking at your likes of, your Tottenhams, your Arsenals, and obviously they're way up there. More the Arsenal, not so necessarily Tottenham, but establishing yourself like maybe Aston Villa have. They've established themselves for years and years to come now with just how well they've been and how well they've been run. It does just take time. But this summer we have got to make some moves. We have got to add some depth. We have got to add some quality. But I'm under no illusion that that our recruitment team will be working hard on that.
You're exactly right, because the Premier League is a brutal animal. I've always said for years, for 20 years, since we've been there, me and my mate I used to go with back in the day, we used to go like teams like Bolton and Stoke spending 10, 12, 7, 8 years, Burnley being in the Premier League for 10 years, Fulham, and we used to think we had this right to be in the Premier League when we were young. We thought that Forest are a much bigger name, they should be there. But the Premier League's brutal. And what always happens is when these teams feel they've made it and they try to push on to the next level, that's when they go down. So for Stoke, they got promoted with a manager, Tony Pulis, who he had a style. It wasn't pretty on the eye. It wasn't everybody's cup of tea. It was a bit dirty, a bit nasty. Stoke managed to stay in the Premier League for a long time with Tony Pulis. When they got aspirations a little bit above their station, they got relegated. Just when they think they're safe, they get relegated. I said it last season about Wolves, looked like they was in for battle. Perhaps again they're in for battle. You look at teams like Fulham, if they lose Mitrovic, obviously Willian signed, but if they lose Paulino and one or two others, it's when teams get a little bit complacent thinking we're here to stay, is when the Premier League can really bite hard, because it's a brutal place to be. If you get it ever so slightly wrong with your transfers, with your application, with your approach to games and your arrogance, it will just, you'll be cut adrift before you even know it. And you can lose lots of games. We saw that last season. You can lose lots of games in a short space of time. You know, there's a saying out there: you're only 3 games away from a disaster. But you can have lost 7 games before you've. Do you know what I mean? It can be 7 on the spin. You've got Man U, you've got Chelsea, you've got Arsenal, you've got Liverpool. You know, and the reality is you're barely ever going to get points from those. So you've really got to make sure, and I think this is what Forest have to do going forward. Whoever makes the decisions, you know, of absolutely nailing this transfer acquisition, you know, and this is, yes, we're talking about pre-season and we've touched on a bit there about tactics, but it all comes to transfer acquisition and getting it right. Why on earth did we sign John Joe Shelby? There was not, for me, not enough due diligence done there. You know, and the same with Chris Wood. Is he going to feature very much this season? Why on earth have we signed these players? You know, because all it is a drain on resources and a drain on the football club. And like everything else, at the end of the season, we got into siege mentality. You know, we found a way after that Liverpool game to think, yeah, we can actually do this. You know, we can score away from home. But it took a long time for the penny to drop. If we've got a top-heavy squad, or we start the season with a player who's not come in yet. I don't know, Henderson, as I touched on before, maybe. Just saying, you know, say we had to start with Shelby, even if he did nothing wrong. You know, your defence might be thinking, what's going on here? And all of a sudden, something not quite right, and people get moved around. Well, I think we saw it a little bit with the players last year, didn't we? With Steve Cook, Scott McKenna's, we had this sort of, again, blind loyalty to them. You know, and ultimately sentiment had to go out the window a little bit. And I think we need to be really focused on that, not letting sentiment get the better of it, but also not letting sort of crazy aspirations and ideas take over as well. So we can really give it a good shot this season.
And yeah, but, you know, as you said earlier in the stream, you know, we've got to give it to these teams. And, you know, we've taken point. The only teams that, I mean, we've taken points from City, as people mentioned in the chat, City, Liverpool, Arsenal. We've taken points from, you know, we've taken points from those teams. We're not taking points from Man United. I'd love to get a win against Man United next season, because, you know, out of all the teams that we got points against, how we didn't get them from Man United, you know, it hurts. It does hurt a little bit, but, you know, this is the thing now. We've got to focus on this season, because, you know, as people say, it's about complacency as well. You can't become complacent, because we could be Leicester, we could be Leeds. You know, I'm so grateful that we're not them, but, you know, when we were losing 2-0, you know, 2-1 against Leeds, and they were all singing, "You're going down with the Leicester, going down with the Leicester," that's what they were doing. They were thinking, that'll never be us. Look at us, we've just beaten Forest 2-1.
And
we're at the top of the world.
That's how brutal it can be. You know, I look back at that game, and I none of us like Leeds or Leicester anyway. And there's always an arrogance around football fans when they're beating you. We're just the same. We're no different.
Of course, yeah.
Those two sets of fans really sort of grated and dug in. And I was getting kicked and pushed. I was walking on my own in the Forest shirt at Leeds. I was getting barged about and called a scab until we were going down. So there was nothing finer than that last day of the season when they went down.
You will also remember, and I'll make this the last point of the stream, because I don't want to keep everybody up for too late, because I know it's Tuesday night, school night and all that. But, you know, we remember that night against Leicester at the King Power, getting beaten 4-0, and all the fans are still singing. And then, you know, and I do want to think a lot about next season, but it's hard not to think about last season and how far we've come. You know, and then that night at Ellen Road, or the afternoon at the London Stadium, you know, after that loss against West Ham. You know, all these nights at the 6-0, you know, at Man City. It's all these nights, although they were so bitter when it happened, it just made that staying up so much more sweet. And we can look forward to, you know, to next season. We can look forward to it, because although it's daunting and although it's going to be really difficult, there's a lot to look forward to, because, you know, we've only really mentioned the really difficult sides of the Premier, the really ruthless bit. But there's also something so beautiful in the fact that a team can go from battling relegation to Europe in a season. You know what I mean? Look at Aston Villa. I mean, I know they had to make a managerial change to do that. And, you know, God forbid we have to do that. I don't think we will. But, you know, teams can change their fortunes and good things can happen. And if you were to offer me, you know, a few nights away on, you know, UEFA Conference League duty, I would absolutely take it by the hand any day. But it could happen. You just don't know.
And I think you're right, Jay. And that's the thing. I've spent a lot of this episode unintentionally being a bit cautious, you know, about the situation where Forest are at what pre-season is showing us. I'm not negative about it. You know, I'm talking about it in a way that I'm trying to be realistic, but I'm not like I said right at the top of the episode, I'm not losing any sleep of what's happened. But there is certain situations I feel as a fan base we have to wake up to and realise that it's just not easy. The reason I kind of want to make that point is because it's a fantastic place to be, and we've got another shot at it. You know, when we've got the best man for the job in charge, and we've got some good players, and if we get it right, we can really, really push on. And if we get that win at Old Trafford, or even beat them at home, you know, we get more than 6 points or whatever it was away from home. If we get 10, and then shot 1 or 2 more at home, then we're safe with a month to go. Do you know, it's that kind of thing. So yes, there's a lot, and also football, for as much you can get on a roll one way, you can get on a roll the other as well. There's one result can sometimes follow another one. You know, like London buses and all that. So there's lots for Forest to be optimistic about. I just feel as we're in pre-season, we spoke about what we've seen, and we're talking about transfers, which is non-existent. We can't deny that, although we're not losing a head on it. So we've just got to be sort of cautious about where we are as a club right now and how we really take it forward into the season.
Absolutely. Well, the message I will leave you always is thank you very much for joining. Des, thank you for joining me on the panel. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you as always, and I'm looking forward to seeing you very soon. And yeah, thank you all for joining. Also, thank you for your support this week in general. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it's really nice to be able to talk Forest with you all. Looking forward to being back very soon. Dor will be back very soon for sure. And maybe I'll be doing a little bit for Dor as well out in Eindhoven, because we'll find a way to watch the game. We'll find a way to watch the game. Maybe it's in a bar somewhere, and I have to, you know, put the phone really close up to the screen so it looks like I'm at the game. We'll try anything. But there will be little bits from PSV and Frankfurt. I'm going to be doing both. It's, you know what I mean? I've been working for ages and ages and ages. So I'm going to go and spend some money in the Netherlands and in Germany watching the best team in the world. Yep, delusional and what? Who cares? Let's all keep smiling. Have a great night. Thank you all for joining the stream. And I'm looking forward to talking to you all in the very near future. Take care, guys. Have a good night. Good night.